Hello and welcome. Today we have Michael Thornhill from Casa Galactica. Is that right, Michael? Is that how you say it?
Casa Galactica in Peru. Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Gavin. Thanks for
yeah.
having me. Pleasure to
You're
be
very
here.
welcome. It's very, very good to have you on the show. I'm really excited for this episode. How's life in Peru at the moment? It's
Yeah, it's going good. We've just had we moved back to the mountains, so we're in the Andean mountains in a little town called Pisac in the Sacred Valley at the moment. So if you can imagine or picture, that's kind of like the region of Machu Picchu.
Right.
I've been in Peru for about 6 years, so I spent a lot of time in the jungle, and we did retreats and did a lot of work in the jungle. But this year, after the pandemic, we opened a new retreat center here in the Sacred Valley. So we have just been really loving it, really loving our home here in the mountains, and been blessed with some beautiful retreats this year. So it's been really great to hold space on these ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats, and yeah, just building our home here, building our work in service to others. It's just been really beautiful. Thank you for asking.
It sounds like a really beautiful place to hold them kind of ceremonies, isn't it? You know, and I think breaking people away from technology and the real world in a sense, and being dumped in the middle of the Amazon rainforest is sort of no better way and to find a better healing than what you would in the city form, if that makes sense. I mean, do you get people from sort of all over the world, and is it sort of do you find there's a certain kind of class of people that come to your retreats, or is it very different ranges of all ages and groups and
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with people from all walks of life, and we really specialize in helping people who've been addicted or have a deep level of trauma or PTSD or abuse. And we also work a lot with people who are wanting to evolve spiritually. So that's why we call our work Healing and Evolution, which is really the 10-day ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats, is because we meet people where they're at on that journey of healing and evolution. So we work with people of all ages. We had someone who was just on the last retreat who was 69 years old. We have quite a lot of women who come to our retreats because we have such a big focus on safety, on integrity, on trauma-informed care. But we work with people from all spectrums, and what we describe our work is for dedicated inner truth seekers. So for people who are really wanting to heal and evolve.
yeah, because I guess there's no good sort of coming all that way and not being ready in a sense, is there? You sort of have to be in that mindset originally, in a sense. Does that make sense? You have to they have to be willing, don't they, to sort of go there in a sense first in their own mind, to go all that way. Is that about right? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, when you're coming to do work with us, and we work with people online and we work with people in person. So for all the work that we do to help people heal and evolve, or to open and activate to their own innate intuition, you have to be ready to see yourself. You have to be ready to do the work. So whether you're getting on a plane or whether you're booking an online session with us, we attract the type of people who are ready to do that work. We attract the type of people who are ready for a shift and a change. We work a lot with people who have perhaps tried other methodologies and are still suffering with anxiety, depression, PTSD, or suicidal ideation, and perhaps have lost that light or lost that hope, and have been told that this is just something that you're going to have to deal with, or just been told that this is something that you're going to have to live with or manage. And for me, I was certainly someone who was in that category, who was heavily addicted to drugs, really depressed, although I wouldn't really acknowledge that I was depressed, had a lot of anxiety, and I didn't even know I had anxiety because I was so high the whole time, to avoid that, to avoid that anxiety. But we really work with people from all walks of life who are ready for a shift and a change, to embody more love, happiness, joy, and peace, and realize that you don't just have to live with PTSD. You don't just have to manage depression, that there is an opportunity of real true hope and expansion available for everyone. And it's not always shared in the mainstream. It's not what we're told when we're growing up. It's not prescribed in a pill form, and it's available to really help change and shift the planet as we're going through this whole big shift and change. And I know a lot of people got more in touch with the level of depression and anxiety through the COVID pandemic, and being locked in the house and being cut off from friendship circles and things like this. So I really feel like at this moment on the earth, there's a real big awakening, and more people are talking about mental health. More and more people are recognizing that, hey, hold on a second, maybe this isn't the way that I really want to live. Maybe there is actually more out there. So with more and more people starting to look for that truth inside, what we really provide is a platform for people to start shifting and changing their life from one that's seated in suffering, depression, and anxiety to one that is more aligned with limitless possibilities, joy, and happiness and freedom.
It's amazing. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's you and your wife, isn't it? Is that right, Michael? You and your wife front up the centre.
Yes. My wife, Jamie, she's originally from Oklahoma in the States. Okay. We met here when we were studying and training in the Amazon rainforest. And after working and facilitating ayahuasca retreats for another organization, we really stepped into our own truth and really the way that we do our work and what we've incarnated on earth to do, which is really to provide trauma-informed, safe, multidimensional spaces for people to step into their own truth, to activate their intuition, to empower their healing, and really to awaken their own path of awakening. And yeah, we're here as reflections for people to do that. And we love, passionate and compelled to provide safe spaces for people to heal and evolve. So I'm very fortunate and very lucky to have met Jamie and to have this life here. And it wasn't always that way. I never thought I would make it to 30 years old. I was heavily addicted, suicidal. And yeah, I never really thought there would be much for me in my life other than suffering and drugs and partying, and it changed, thankfully.
Yeah. Was there a moment that you remember when it sort of changed? Was there kind of like a big awakening all of a sudden, like you opened your third eye? There was something that just went snap all of a sudden and made you realise that the life of drugs and partying wasn't the best way to go. Because I know I did, but it's I always wonder that with anyone that's been through sort of trauma and abuse and a lot of addictions and stuff. If there was there a moment, was there a pinnacle time moment that you remember where you made that shift, or were you ready to make that shift? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great question, Gavin. And for me, it was quite a distinct moment in my life where I really started to really reevaluate. So there'd been times, where everyone's in January and we're like, we're doing dry January, and I'm like, I'm doing the dry 2 days and then giving up. So like, oh,
Michael,
yeah. So it's like, oh, and then okay, right, well, I should really stop smoking and stop for a week, and then I'd just be back, and then just be like, let's just carry on. But then there was a point when my mother, who'd been ill all of her life, she passed away about 7 years ago. And for me, that was a real big wake-up call for me. Not in the sense that it was like a wake-up call in terms of like, oh, I'm doing my life wrong. It was more of the sense of like, wow, I'm seeing death in the face. Maybe I don't really want to die. Maybe I do actually. Maybe I want to live past 30. Maybe that there, maybe I don't want to have another family member have to deal with me dying, because I could feel how painful that was for me with my mum passing. So I really started to take it a little bit more seriously and think, okay, well, I really want to heal from these addictions. And I started getting into meditation. I'd done therapy. I've been doing therapy, and I did therapy off and on, and that was really good, and that was useful, but it never really got to the core of things. And I then met an energy healer, which I didn't know any of this, because I was running a headhunting business, a recruitment business. I was what you probably call quite a high functioning addict, which meant that I would have more money to get high with, which was also a motivator for me to just have money to do whatever I wanted. And when I met this energy healer, it was a completely different world for me. And then she started doing this at different energy healing with me. And I really got in contact with the grief from my mother's passing. And I could feel like an energetic connection to my mother, which was, I couldn't really explain and I couldn't really work out, but I knew that there's a lot of emotion being released. And this work with this energy healer was really good. And she told me about ayahuasca. And she said that ayahuasca is really good for addiction. And I was willing to try it. I've been doing work with this woman and it was really helping me. So I went ahead and I was living in Berlin in Germany at the time, which anyone knows Berlin is a great place to be a drug addict. It's a great nightlife. So it was
the worst in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny story actually. I was at one of my attempts for wanting to to give up drugs. There's an opportunity that the company I was working for, they said, we're gonna send you to Dubai. We're gonna send you to the Middle East. We're gonna send you to Dubai, and you're gonna run the office out there and do all this stuff. And I was like, great, this is it. This is my chance. Like, drugs are illegal over there. Yeah. This is really, really good. I'm going to go for it. Right? I'm all in. Right? I'm going to do this. I'm just going to leave everything. And I'm going to leave my life behind. And they were like, actually, we've changed our mind. We're sending you to Berlin. I was like, oh my God, no. This is the complete. It was great. It was a great time. I was DJing a lot and successful. And it was a great place and lovely place. But it was actually the opposite of what I'd expected. But anyway, I was in Berlin and I went to an ayahuasca ceremony and I had this completely profound healing and transformation that in one weekend I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped doing drugs, and I went on this whole different path. I ended up going traveling to India, Nepal, to immerse myself in spiritual teachings, which I was really a baby in this sense. I didn't know anything. I was this kind of like logical businessman who was the DJ and all this stuff, and I didn't really believe in anything. I'd never really believed.
Party, drugs. Yeah.
So it was just a complete different experience. So I went there and I was learning yoga and Reiki and traveling around, and then I ended up coming to South America, to Peru, where I went into a 10-week initiation course in the jungle, where I started learning. Sorry,
not just a little one, a 10-week one. Yeah,
yes, 10 weeks, and over that 10 weeks, I think I drank ayahuasca 30 times, and was learning how to facilitate ceremony. And then I ended up staying in the jungle, and I got an apprenticeship, and I started working at a retreat center. And then I met my wife, and now here we are after we built Casa Galactica together. And we dedicate our lives to helping other people heal and evolve. But that was the pivotal moment for me, where my mother passed, and it was just like a changing of lanes. It was like the lanes changed. It was like, okay, it's time for something different, and that was a really big catalyst for me.
Yeah. Was you into sort of the drugs and stuff before your mum died, or did that come on afterwards, or was it always sort of there? Was it like a cultural thing of where you live, like you sort of grow up in it because everyone else is doing it? Do you know?
Do you mean was I born in the UK? Yes, I was born in the UK, and it was a pretty cultural thing. Yeah. I think a lot of my families got into drugs from drinking and drugs probably from. I started smoking weed around about 12 or 13, and then was drinking, and then got onto harder drugs kind of like around about 16, and was then partying, raving, and it was just like that was my escape. So it was very much from a young age that was within. And I think I can speak that it's very interesting because my wife's from the US, and it's a different culture. The UK culture is like you go drink. I'm not saying it's not like that anywhere in the US, but there's definitely something on my travels that I've seen is that like I think that the UK has a very much a drug and drink culture that's just part of growing up. And not necessarily for everyone, but it's just very, very commonplace. And I think that you can very much get sucked away into that without even realizing that you have a problem. Because I would never really even recognize that I had a problem for a long time.
I was the same, and it had to take that sort of massive pinnacle. It's like the universe steps in all of a sudden and goes, actually, you don't want to be living that life no more. And here, look, this is this world here, because like you as well, I'd have never sort of looked at any sort of spiritual thing, I'd have poo-pooed it straight away. You know, if it had nothing to do with raves, drugs, and partying all night, it didn't exist in my world. You know, and I think like what you were saying, it kind of a common denominator in the UK where that's pretty much what you do, isn't it? You know, and then it's all about the DJs. And you know, example, I went to over Ireland last week there, and there was a 21st birthday going on in the next room. No DJ in sight, none. It was all live Irish trad music, you know, and all the younger generation over there are into their live trad folk country music, you know, and it's really bizarre because you played that in an English pub for a 21st birthday, and they'd be tearing the windows out and all sorts, you know yourself, like, you know, and it's just they weren't interested in that whole DJ aspect thing. But I suppose us being from the UK, it's just kind of like the norm. It was like once the big rave scene came in the 80s, it was all about dance. I mean, I remember in my younger days, you'll probably remember this yourself, where you wouldn't hear dance music on radio. Full stop. You know, it's like there was no way. I think you got a little bit of drum and bass on a Friday night between 1 and 2, and that was it. There was no. It was all very still underground and dance music. I mean, now every time you turn on the radio or the TV, there's a drum and bass song on an advert or something. You know, it's like the norm, isn't it? But I think the drug culture, especially in the pubs in the UK, is definitely normal. It's like normalised. You know, a lot of the generation these days, it's like cocaine is just the tip of the iceberg with the alcohol. You know, it's like they go out and they have to do the cocaine because it's part of their Friday and Saturday night regular week, you know, and it's really bad, especially when you watch some of the documentaries and you see how they make it and stuff, and it's like it's not even natural in any way. Well, I suppose the first ingredient is natural, and you know more about this plant-based medicine more than I do, but I know the original part of it is from a plant, and then they put like bleach and nitromores and battery acid and God knows what else in it, you know, and then they go and do it off a toilet seat, which is quite beyond me. It's probably one of the most cleanest places in the world to do it. But yeah, so for the benefit of me, and because I'm going off a tangent there, for the benefit of me and the benefit of the listeners, can you explain to me more about what ayahuasca is and the benefits, the more benefits it has for mental health over traditional medicines, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. So ayahuasca is an Amazonian vine, but the ayahuasca brew is actually two plants. It's the ayahuasca vine, and traditionally it's the chacruna leaf. So the chacruna leaf is a high DMT content plant, and DMT is usually not orally active. So if you just ate a bunch of these leaves, you wouldn't really have any effect. But the ayahuasca vine contains within it an MAOI, or a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which one of those effects means that the DMT in that plant, in the chacruna plant, isn't broken down. So it means that you go into a multidimensional experience for anywhere from kind of like 3 to 5 or 6 hours, depending on your own composition.
Wow.
And there is the energy and the spirit of the ayahuasca plant, which is then a guide through that magical, mysterious world. Now, so that's kind of how it works. And you drink that and you're in a ceremony. We hold this in a ceremony where we sing healing songs or Icaros. It's Jamie and I who hold these ceremonies. And we do this in a trauma-informed way, which really takes into account that anyone who comes and sits with us in ceremony could have experienced a certain level of trauma, whether they're aware of it or whether they're unaware of it. You know, for me, in my experience, I was definitely not aware of the ritual abuse, the cult abuse, the sexual abuse, all these other things I had no idea about, which is actually the reason why I was actually numbing myself with all these different drugs and escaping and partying along the way. So
I can resonate with you that so much. The way you say that, I can resonate, because that's exactly why I did it. It was like take all the other stuff to sort of bury that and consume it, and then you lock them neurons off, didn't you? And you know, would you say that the ayahuasca opens them neurons again and allows you to deal with them things that you've locked away? You know.
Yeah. So just with regards to like the addictions, for instance, for me, what no therapist told me, or what no one else really told me, or what I was aware of, because I was just always told from a young age, you're a drug addict, you're gonna amount to nothing, you're just a criminal drug addict, and this whole like thing. No one ever said, well, perhaps there's something's happened to you that you can't face. Something's happened to you that you're unable to actually. I was unable to be sober because being sober was so uncomfortable. Because what happens is then all those feelings, all that anxiety, all that suffering from whatever these traumatic events are in one's life, they start to come to the surface.
You start playing the highlight reel again, don't you, in your head? Yeah, yeah.
So what ayahuasca does, and I get asked this question, I think it's also very interesting to bring this up now, is that people say, well, what's the difference between plant medicine and a drug? And so for me, drugs have been something that's used to escape life, escape the pain and the suffering, and plant medicines, and ayahuasca in particular for us, is something that's used to then go and face it. Face it at the root cause, to release it somatically from the being. So
I love that word, the root cause. I love it.
So that's what plant medicines are about. Plant medicines are about healing at the root cause. So healing trauma, anxiety, PTSD, depression, suffering at the root cause. And then pharmaceutical medications as well, because we don't need to talk about recreational drugs. We can start to go into the realms of antidepressants. And whilst antidepressants can be very useful for people for a period of time to help balance things out, it's not ever going to look at the root cause of the problem. It's going to be something that you rely on, and most people who take antidepressants after a period of time have a resistance to them, or the side effects start getting worse than the benefits from them. If you just look at the side effects of antidepressants, it's like suicidal, depression, all this stuff that's trying to treat. Yeah, really bad. So plant medicines go into the root cause, and at the root cause, then that's released, so that you don't need something to cover up the symptoms, because the symptoms are no longer there. It's the symptoms are no longer there. So plant medicines, how it works in an ayahuasca ceremony, amongst many things, you can start to feel really deep levels of trauma and pain in the body. You can revisit past life events or unconscious events in your life, see those. You can revisit conscious events in your life and reframe them and see them. So like, for instance, if you were bullied at school, run away from it. Or if you were bullied at school, and tell your parent, rather than being called, like a snitch or something like that. You can have these different experiences, and you can then go very deep into the subconscious and release this emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical trauma from the body, so that when you come out on the other side, you no longer experience the symptoms of what I call the symptoms of separation, or really the symptoms of being separate from one consciousness, the symptoms of being feeling separate, at least, from the universe. And when we go through those experiences with ayahuasca, it can catalyze processes that might take 5, 10, 15, or 20 years with therapy to even get close to, or 5, 10, 15, 20 years of meditation to have these levels of spiritual awakening. So on the other side of the things, I kind of talked a little bit more about the healing, and like on the evolution side of things is again why we call our ayahuasca retreats 10-day ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats. On the other side of that, there's a very deep spiritual awakening. There's a very deep recognition of the oneness of all things. There can be divine experiences. There can be very deep, direct spiritual experiences, which doesn't take a middleman. It doesn't take a preacher or someone telling you this is what God's like, or this is what the universe is like, or this is that one consciousness, or whatever you want to call that experience. You can have a very direct experience of that, which can then fundamentally shift and change the way that you see and perceive reality, and then have fundamental changes in your relationships, in your life, in your levels of happiness, in the way that you show up in your community. So there's these really very deep periods of transformation that can occur that in my experience would take a long time to even get close with other healing modalities, either natural or kind of pharmaceutical, and whatever it might be. But the way that we do this and the way that we hold these ayahuasca ceremonies and our ayahuasca retreats is that this is bundled around the whole plethora of other plant medicines which are non-psychoactive, which help to release anxiety, depression, stress, pain, rheumatism from the body. and then we package that all up within empowerment teachings, integration, sharing circles, and then provide tools for people so that people can actually start to make fundamental changes in their life rather than just having another plant medicine experience or another psychedelic experience.
And a big giant book to take home with them at the end of the session. Yeah. Sorry, carry on, Michael. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So we record all of these workshops, we record all these teachings, we give a lot of people that can go away, and then we have integration programs there afterwards, so that we help people to transform their lives. So all the work that we do with people, as I mentioned before, we're just reflections for people. We're not here to tell you how to live your life. We're here to help you open doors and be a reflection that if you choose to, you can walk through that and change your life. And this work's not necessarily easy, but I can tell you, the life and the path that I was on, I would have probably been dead or very close to being dead with the life that I was living, with the amount of drugs that I was doing, with the amount of cocaine that I was doing, with the lack of sleep that I was having. It was just not sustainable. And, the life I was living, the work I was doing was completely unfulfilling. It was, the fulfilling when you get a nice paycheck. It's fulfilling when, you do a sales call. But, when you start looking at sales calls and things like this and the things that you talk, it's on some level, it's manipulation. It's just manipulating people to do things. And it's like, it's not fulfilling. So what we're here to do at Casa Galactica is to help you heal your own self, to recognize that you're your own teacher, to recognize that you're your own healer, and to be reflections to you so that you can choose the life that you actually prefer, and to have another option, because there might have been so many times and situations and circumstances in your life when you've been told this is how you have to live your life, or you're broken, or there's something wrong with you, or you're just a product of circumstance. And we're here to tell you that it doesn't have to be the case. You can transform, you can heal, and you can evolve.
Yeah, and it's getting people past them limiting beliefs, isn't it, as well? I mean, they build up from a very young age, and if you've had, any childhood trauma or any childhood abuse or seen things as a child that you possibly wouldn't have seen, them limiting beliefs are starting from them early days, aren't they? And then you build on them as you get older, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, but you fornicate them in such a sense, like, it's right and that's right and you're wrong and everyone else around me is wrong, and I'm just going to go and take more drugs and hide in a nightclub and forget about it all. And that's a big barrier for a lot of people, isn't it, with the limiting beliefs, and it's trying to overcome them limiting beliefs and reopen them neurological paths that they've closed. With the use of your plant-based medicines and stuff like that. I wanted to touch actually on the other plant-based medicines that you do that aren't so psychoactive. I mean, are they easily to sort of make yourself? Is there sort of like you could literally go for a walk in the woods and go foraging and make half of them yourself, in a sense?
Well, yes, if that woods was the Amazon rainforest, that you could go for a walk in there.
Yeah.
We work with a lot of, because we're in the mountains here. We're in the mountains of the Andean mountains, so we're a few hours flight from the jungle, or we basically have connections from the jungle where we still are able to obtain all of the plant medicines whilst living in this beautiful scenery in the Andean mountains. So we provide a lot of these plant treatments on our retreat, and then we also for people who want to take them and continue taking them at home, we also package them up with the right concentrations and the right powders and the right instructions that you can continue to take those at home. And and those are plants that are, they're non-psychoactive. They don't have any illegal substances in them. But the majority of the plant medicines that we work with are to help repair the brain, the memory, the nervous system, and really the central nervous system in its entirety. Through that is usually what becomes damaged through the effects of trauma, and through the rewiring of the brain with these different types of plant medicines. That deep-seated trauma and limited beliefs, whilst held in a safe trauma-informed container, can really start to unravel the negativity and start to reprogram in more healthy, aligned belief systems. But for anyone who is at home and is just wanting to do something straight away and just like, okay, I want to try something, just invite you to get some eucalyptus leaves, where you can get some eucalyptus leaves from anywhere, and then just put some eucalyptus leaves in a pot, and then just boil it, and then just connect to those plants, and then just with your heart, and just ask, can you help me? Can you help lower the stress? Can you help me feel more peaceful? Can you help me feel more relaxed? And then just breathe over the pot with a towel over your head. And that plant is probably one of my favorite plants for helping with anxiety. So you can do that a couple of times a day. If you can't sleep at night, this is also a really good thing, you know, for anyone who perhaps has to have sleeping tablets or things like that, because, you know, anxiety levels anxiety can hit at nighttime. So if you're looking to an alternative to perhaps pharmaceuticals, these saunas, or little vapor baths that we call them, these are really beneficial. And we have a whole fireplace outside, and we have a full body size one that you go in, and that you breathe, and it absorbs through the whole body. But for a mini version of that, that's a really effective way to help deal with stress, trauma, and anxiety.
Yeah, because I always remember in the old days, you'd always see all the old ones, and if they had flu, they'd be over a bowl with salt and a bit of cinnamon in it with a blanket over their head, wouldn't they? And it was sort of like the norm, but you don't see that anymore, do you? So there you go. From what you were saying there, Michael, the eucalyptus leaves is pretty much the old school way that all the old ones used to put it in the water, blanket over your head, and breathe it in. That's really cool. That's a nice little takeaway. Thank you for that, Michael.
Oh, you're welcome.
But yeah, so it's in a sense it's like there's not they don't have to go down the psychedelic route. There's lots of other plant-based options that you can do to overcome anxiety or depression, because like you said, I mean, we all know anxiety, you know, it doesn't discriminate as to what time of day it is. If it wants to take you down, it will, and it's the same with the depression, you know. And it's I mean, I've had times there where I was doing a normal day's work and I was fine 1 minute, and then all of a sudden it just went boom, and it just consumes me in seconds. And it's knowing how to manage that, isn't it? It's knowing how to, because I mean, would you agree with this? I always like to ask this as well. It's like your past and your traumas and addictions and all the pain that's always been there never actually goes away. It always lingers. It's always going to be there. The memories you can reprogram to an extent, but it's in the sense of the way that it's how you manage it. Like, it's always going to be there. It's just knowing to paint that picture in a different light, in a sense, or paint it in a different color. Would you agree?
I think that the process that I've been through with working with ayahuasca, there's been definitely times where I felt like this is where, you know, at the earlier parts of that journey, where I felt like, wow, this is just going to be my whole life, and this is going to have to, I'm just going to have to live with that, and it's just going to be managing it at different levels. And I feel like recently, through the work with plant medicines, and also been working a lot with a toad medicine called Bufo alvarius, which has been very, very powerful in my own healing journey.
Is that toad, as in a frog toad? Yeah.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And how do they extract that? How does that work?
So that is milked from its glands. So
Right.
it's this 5-MeO-DMT is the main component, but there's also some other compounds in there, and that's milked from its glands and then released back into the wild. Wow. So you just milk a portion of that so that it still has its own venom to be able to defend itself.
Of course.
So through the work that I've been doing with ayahuasca, with plant medicines, with the toad medicine, this has been something that I really feel like on many levels that the trauma doesn't affect me anymore. No. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, and I'm definitely still healing, and there's definitely still things going on, but it's very much a kind of a background, very, very faint background noise, where it used to be kind of like Top of the Pops in your face on the TV, you know. That was the only thing you could see. And now it's just like sometimes things will come up and I'll be like, no, it's a trigger. But what happens with plant medicines, which is really, really beautiful, is you just have these experiences of healing on the retreats, like I've shared a few of my own, and then you go about your life, and then all of a sudden, just things that used to trigger you before don't trigger you anymore, and it's like, wow, like that triggered me for like 10 years, and now that doesn't affect me anymore, and it doesn't affect me, continues to not affect me. So these kind of like what I would say is kind of descriptions of healing is that, and for the addictions for me, one of those big ones was even though I kind of joked about doing my 2 day dry January, it was like when I actually drank ayahuasca, I didn't want to drink, and I was like, that's the first time in my life I've not wanted to drink. So I was like, oh wow, you actually get sober by healing whatever is underneath it, and then you don't want to get high. Whereas the whole time, I thought that healing from addiction would just be getting greater willpower, just being like, no, now I just don't really want to drink, you know. Sometimes like cravings, or I would say a craving, or sometimes around a lot of people who maybe are drinking, and I'm like, might pop up for a minute, but just it's not. It's like I say, it's background noise, and I never thought that was possible.
No, neither did I. Funny enough, I can resonate with you on that one, Michael. Yeah, and I found with me it was kind of like it wasn't calling you in the way that it used to. It's like you used to look at that bottle and it had to be finished. As once you popped that cork, that was it. The whole bottle was gone. But now there's not that draw to it. Like I'm not bothered by it at all. It doesn't like excite me in the way that it used to. And
What shifted and changed for you, Gavin? What was it for you?
It was one. I was getting to a stage where I was getting older, and it was like like at 35 years old, still going raving and that. And then it was I think you mentioned it earlier, like a physical pain. The traumas can turn into a physical pain, and mine was my back. And I used to dance for 12, 15 hours straight, not a bother, and not think nothing of it. And then, like over time, it started deteriorating my back, and but I thought at the time it was the drugs that was doing it to me. And then what I realised throughout my healing, that it wasn't actually the drugs at all. It was trapped emotional abuse and trauma that was trapped in my muscles, in my nerve endings and stuff. And it was only until I went down the psychedelic route that I started opening all these neuron paths and that again. And that was kind of when I realised that there was a lot that needed sorting out in my head, and I had to change that. And I mean, we used to call it the annual recalibration of the mind. That was our favourite way of putting it. And we'd go and do it once a year, and because like you, the same. I've been through lots and lots of counselling, lots and lots of therapy. I used to bury my head in the sand with the drugs and the drink and stuff to try and make it go away, and it never goes away. You just mask it. It's like a band-aid. There was something you were saying there earlier about traditional medicines and pharmaceuticals, and it is effectively just a band-aid. It will only patch up the problem and never get to the root cause of what the real problem is, which is what I loved. I loved what you were saying earlier, because it was perfect. It was bang on point. I agreed and resonated with it so much, and yeah, it was a pinnacle moment for me, I think, as well, when I had to find my mum's parents and my biological family, and that was when I realised that there was a lot of healing that I needed to do, which is why I do what I do now, and hence why we started the Sons of Anxiety, to shed that light and share them stories from guys like yourself, from guys like me, and we wanted to do it where if them stories are shared, it's then becomes a survival guide for other people who are going through the same thing. They can listen to the podcast and go, oh, actually, I'm not the only one, and it's nice to be able to have that platform to be able to say to people, you're not on your own. There is other people that have gone through it in various different forms. It might be through drugs and alcohol, or addictions, or abuse, or trauma, or whatever it may be, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, in a sense, and whether it be through plant medicine or healing or Reiki or energy healing or what, you know. I think when you go back to like the old school sort of circles that maybe myself and you would have been like sort of consumed in, they all look at like you're nuts. And you say, oh, just come out in the woods with no shoes on. We're going to do a ceremony around the fire. Have you gone mad? No, I've found a really good healing method, you know. I think if you're in that world, it's very hard to see anything outside of that world. And then you have to have that sort of pinnacle moment to be able to see that there is other options and there is another way out apart from traditional medicines and chemicals and God knows what else you can throw down your throat or down your neck, which is why I love what you're doing. I think the whole plant-based medicine and the learning about foraging and knowing not to eat the wrong ones and not to eat the wrong things and, you know, all that sort of stuff. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. But I just love what you guys do. I think it's amazing. So how can anyone arrange a trip to Peru, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, Gavin, thanks so much for sharing about your own story of healing. That's very inspirational for a lot of people, I'm sure,
well,
myself
much.
Included. Thank you.
I tend to tell it like I'm just jumping on a bus, you know. It's I think, like you say, once you've got past that stage, it's easier to talk about it, you know. So yeah. But carry on.
So check out our website, casagalactica.com. So that's casagalactica.com. And you can find more about our 10-day ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats. And just invite you to book a free 30-minute consultation with us. So just go down to the footer of the page and you can click on the Zoom icon or the free consultation button. You can contact us there and we'll be happy to talk with you about your own personal set of circumstances to hear what it is that you're looking for. And we can just openly and truthfully tell you how a retreat with us can benefit you. And if you're not wanting to make it all the way to Peru, we also do online trauma healing sessions, multidimensional work that's very, very effective for people who are wanting to heal from addiction, trauma, anxiety, pain, and suffering, and begin and deepen that process of healing, awakening, and evolution. But if people wanting to come to Peru, really, you can find all that information on our website. We have on our growth portal, we also have more videos and talks about how ayahuasca is of benefit. And you can then go through that process of booking when you go into a health and wellness screening questionnaire, because the first thing we want to do is safety and trauma-informed care is our utmost priority. So we'll go through a full screening process just to make sure that there's no contraindications for you from either mental, physical, or emotional health that might, for any reason, cause any contraindication, or any pharmaceuticals that you might have to abstain from for a period of time before coming to us. And we have a whole full onboarding preparation process. You have a preparation call one-on-one with us to go through that health and wellness screening questionnaire. We have a group preparation call so you can get to know some of the other group members as well. We put into a private encrypted messaging app called Signal that we have a little group there that you can then start connecting with everyone. And then once you get yourself to Peru, to Lima, and then to Cusco, we pick you up from the Cusco airport, and then we bring you to the retreat center and we look after you all the way through that process. You'll do 4 ayahuasca ceremonies with us, over 8 different additional plant treatments. You have 3 one-on-one sessions, 4 starlit campfires in the Andean mountains, plus a load of different channeled workshops to help empower your healing. With regards to the food, we have this great chef who cooks this amazing healthy food. Awesome. We have optional trout, optional chicken available for people. Super fresh food, super tasty, but very healthy and part of the ayahuasca diet that we do. What we call is a nourishment plan, actually. Some people call it an ayahuasca diet. For us, it's more about a nourishment plan. How can we provide the best platform for you for this retreat? And then we have a plethora of other activities intermingled and intertwined to really provide what we describe as the optimum environment for you to heal and evolve. And then we really help people shift and change and transform their lives in real tangible ways, to stop taking drugs, to stop living from a place of fear and start to embody that love, and really start to enjoy being a human, because it's not all bad. If it's amongst popular belief, against popular belief, it's not all bad, and it does get better. But the invitation is, and for wherever you are, is to begin to look inside, begin to ask for help, recognize that, if Gavin can change, if I can change, that means you can. That's an invitation, and it doesn't have to be with plant medicines. It doesn't have to be with us, but we do invite you, wherever you are, to believe in yourself and to find what you really love, and really start to enjoy your life and to live in that love beyond the fear and the anxiety. Ask for help and know that you're loved.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're never alone. Our tagline is actually "Never alone, stronger together." So there you go. That was a perfect hashtag for following up what you just said there, Michael. It was amazing what you just said there. It was brilliant. I'll have to remember some of that and save it for a future podcast. I think it was really good. But it was lovely having you on, Michael. It's a great pleasure having you on and telling us about what you're doing. I think it's amazing. I think your story and your struggles and how you've gone from that dark hole into where you are now is just hats off to you. It takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to open them doors and to walk down them roads. Everyone's capable of it, and like you say, you just got to be open and be willing to share that, even if it's just a stranger, even if it's just someone at a bus stop that you've never met before, and they're willing to open their ears for you. Use that opportunity to get that stuff off your chest and not carry it around with you, because as we said earlier in the podcast, if you carry that around with you, that emotion will eventually turn into a physical pain. And then you'll be going to the doctors more and more and more, and you don't want to go to the doctors. You can go to a retreat centre in Peru for 10 days. It was a lot more chilled, and I guess the beds are probably better and the food's definitely a lot better, so there you go, there's no excuses. But thanks for listening, guys. You can follow us at sonsofanxiety.co.uk. All our podcasts are listed on our website at sonsofanxiety.co.uk. You can follow us on all the social media platforms. And if you are after any extra content or exclusive content, you can always catch us out on our Patreon account as well. But thank you, Michael. Thank you again and again. That was a brilliant episode.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin. Thank you, everyone. And I forgot to tell you as well, when you go to our website, if you subscribe to our mailing list, then you'll get a free 5-hour Fundamentals of Trauma Healing workshop, completely free, and another guide for strengthening your intuition. So if you resonate with anything that's been shared and you want to take that a little bit further, just invite you to go to the website and sign up there, because you can just continue to take that to the next level, completely free at home for you straight away.
Wow, there's a lot of content there for 5 hours for free. So yeah, jump on that as quick as possible. So well done. Thank you very much, Michael. Take care, tribes people. All the best.